Welcome back to the deep dive. We have a really specific, almost true crime style logistical puzzle for you today. But first, we have to acknowledge the local engine making all this possible. This deep dive is brought to you by our local business sponsor, 337 Media. If you are looking to build a beautiful website, and this is the big one master local SEO to actually get found, 337 Media is the team behind some of the most successful Acadiana brands. Check the link in the description. It really helps support the folks who support us.
Oh, local SEO is a beast. Having a guide for that is
It's essential.
absolutely. Now, speaking of beasts and needing a guide, today we're looking at a system that feels like it's designed to be slow, confusing, and geographically fractured. The eviction process in New Orleans.
It is the absolute nightmare scenario for any property owner.
Yeah, and we're not talking about how to screen tenants or, investment yield. We are talking about the moment the relationship completely fails. The rent hasn't been paid, communication has stopped, and now you are in a race against the clock.
We're basing this deep dive on sources from Lafayette Process Servers, LLC, which is led by Scott Frank. And I have to say, the picture they paint of the legal landscape in Orleans Parish is, well, it's labyrinthine.
That is a very polite way of putting it. The source material, it really highlights this fundamental tension. You have the time is money reality of the landlord
Right.
versus the, geological speed of the municipal court system.
And when we say time is money, let's actually put that in context. It isn't just about lost profit.
No, not at all. If you have a mortgage on that rental property, the bank does not care if your tenant is paying you or not. Every single day that unit is occupied by a non-paying tenant, you are subsidizing their living costs.
Yeah.
You're damaging your own credit, your own cash flow. It's a hemorrhage.
Okay, so let's stop the bleeding. The first thing that really jumped out at me in this research was the geography. I think most people, even if they know New Orleans, they think of it as one big city. One mayor, one police force, one vibe. But
Yeah.
legally, it is split right down the river.
It's a tale of two cities, essentially. And this is where the amateur landlords just get crushed. The source material is very, very specific about this jurisdictional split between the East Bank and the West Bank.
This is what they call the parish line complexity.
Right. But it's even more granular than that. You have First City Court, which covers the East Bank. That's going to be your downtown, the French Quarter, Mid-City, Lakeview, the New Orleans you see on postcards,
Okay, and then you have the West Bank. Algiers, English turn.
which falls under Second City Court. Now, to a layman, that sounds like a minor administrative detail, I'll just drive across the bridge.
Right.
But the source emphasizes this is a fatal error in the eviction process.
Because if I file my paperwork in First City Court for a house that's in Algiers,
The clerk might take your filing fee. They might even stamp the paper. But 3 weeks later, when you finally get in front of a judge, the case will be dismissed. Lack of jurisdiction.
so you don't just get transferred.
No, you get thrown out. You have to start over. You have to refile in Second City Court, pay all new fees, and restart that clock. Meanwhile, your tenant has lived there for another month, completely rent-free, because you didn't look at a map correctly.
That is just brutal. It's bureaucracy as a weapon.
It's strict liability. And there's a cultural component to this geography, too. The sources mention the bridge fee.
Yes. I laughed when I read this because anyone who lives in New Orleans knows the psychological barrier of the Crescent City connection. It feels like a road trip just to go to the West Bank.
It does. And in the legal logistics industry, that feeling, it translates directly into fees. A lot of process servers will charge a premium, a bridge fee, or a travel surcharge just to cross the river to serve papers in Algiers.
Which feels like getting charged extra for pizza delivery because you live 3 streets past the highway.
It is exactly that. But it adds up. If you have a bunch of units or high turnover, those bridge fees will eat into whatever you're trying to recover. And one interesting differentiator for Lafayette Process Servers, according to the source, is that they treat the whole West Bank as standard territory. No bridge fees.
That's a smart competitive wedge. We'll cross the river for free. But let's get to the actual mechanics of the service itself, because this is where I think the expert versus amateur divide gets really wide. There's a testimonial in the notes from a property manager, Sarah L. She was using the sheriff's office for her evictions.
The default option, the one everyone thinks of.
Right, and she was drowning. She said the sheriff's office was taking 3 weeks just to serve the initial notices.
And we have to be fair to the sheriff's office here. mean, they aren't lazy. They're just overwhelmed. Sheriff's deputies are handling criminal warrants, subpoenas, domestic disputes, and civil evictions. If there's a shooting in New Orleans East, the deputy's going there, not to serve a 5-day notice on some duplex.
It's priority management. But for Sarah L., that 3-week delay was killing her revenue. So she switched to Scott Frank's private team and got the service done in 24 hours. Now, I have to ask the skeptic's question here. If the sheriff is the law, is using a private guy like Scott actually legal, can a private company really kick somebody out of their home?
You're conflating two different steps, and that is the most common mistake people make. There's the service of process, and then there is the execution of the judgment.
Okay, unpack that distinction for us.
A private process server, like Lafayette process servers, can legally serve the initial documents. So the 5-day notice to vacate, the rule for possession, these are the papers that tell the tenant, hey, legal action is starting. Getting these into the tenant's hands or, on their door starts the legal clock.
So that's the race. You want that clock to start today, not next month.
Correct. But, and this is the hard line, only the sheriff can execute the final warrant of possession. That's the physical eviction, the lockout, the moment where, weapons might be drawn and furniture is put on the curb. You cannot hire a private company to physically remove a human being from a home. That is a state monopoly on force.
Okay, so the strategy is use the private server to sprint through the paperwork phase, and then you bring the sheriff in only for the finale.
Exactly. You are paying for speed where speed is actually legal.
Yeah.
And the source material highlights that this private option, it comes with a level of transparency the sheriff just can't offer.
The Amazon tracking aspect of it.
Right. They mention a digital platform where landlords can just upload documents directly. No driving papers to a courthouse or a lawyer's office. You scan, you upload, and the rope gets assigned.
And you get an email the second it's done. Which brings me to the how.
Yeah.
Because I'm picturing a tenant who hasn't paid rent. They know the landlord is angry. They are not answering the door for a stranger with a clipboard. They are using what I call the ostrich strategy.
Head in the sand. It's the most common defense mechanism.
So if the server shows up and the tenant just stays quiet behind the door, is the landlord stuck? Does the server have to camp out on the lawn?
No. And this is where Louisiana law offers a really specific workaround. It's called tacking.
Which sounds like sailing, but I'm guessing it means thumbtacks.
Essentially, the law allows the server to securely post or tack the notice to the front door of the residence if nobody answers.
But wait, if I'm the tenant and I get dragged into court, can I just lie? Can I just say, Your Honor, there was no paper on my door, the wind must have blown it away, or the neighborhood kids took it? It becomes a he said, she said.
And if the judge believes the tenant, guess what? The case is thrown out. Bad service is the #1 technicality that kills eviction cases.
So how do you prove a negative? How do you prove the paper was there?
You don't just use a thumbtack, you use metadata. And this is the tech part of the whole thing. Lafayette process servers, they use GPS-verified affidavits.
Okay, this is the part that actually impressed me. It's not just a photo.
Anyone can take a photo of a piece of paper on a door.
Yeah.
But can you prove when it was taken? Can you prove where it was taken? The system they use embeds the GPS coordinates and the satellite timestamp directly into the image file itself.
It's digital forensics for a rent dispute.
It has to be. When that affidavit lands on the judge's desk, it's not just a claim, it's a data point. At 2:14 p.m. on Tuesday the 12th, at these exact longitude and latitude coordinates, this notice was posted.
Oh.
It makes that "I didn't get it" defense almost impossible to argue.
That's the difference between I think I served him and I can prove I served him.
Which is the only thing that actually matters in court.
I want to pivot to something a little darker now. We've talked about the ostrich tenant who just hides, but the source material alludes to the other kind of tenant, the hostile tenant.
The safety component.
Yeah. The outline mentions eviction nightmares, and it specifically flags New Orleans East as an area that requires extreme caution. We need to talk about the physical reality of doing this job, because a lot of landlords think, oh, I'll just save the money and serve the papers myself.
That is a very dangerous calculation. We are not just talking about awkward conversations. Evictions are emotional flashpoints. People are losing their homes. They're desperate. They're angry. And they often feel they have nothing left to lose.
And if you, the landlord, the literal face of their problem, show up on their doorstep,
You become the target. The source material emphasizes that professional servers, they act as a buffer. They're a disinterested third party.
Yeah.
But even then, the geography of New Orleans presents physical barriers. New Orleans East, for example, has a lot of gated apartment complexes and fenced-off properties.
Right, and if you can't get to the front door to tack the notice because of a locked gate,
Right.
and you jump the fence, well, now you're trespassing.
Exactly. And a hostile tenant knows this. They will use that gate as a shield.
So how does a pro handle a locked gate in a hostile area?
The source notes they have specific protocols for this, though they don't give away all the trade secrets. But generally, professional servers have legal access rights, or they know how to effect service through alternative means that a layperson just wouldn't. More importantly, they have de-escalation training.
Or just basic situational awareness.
Right. Knowing when to walk away. Knowing when a situation is turning from tense to unsafe. If you're a landlord trying to save $75 by doing it yourself, you have to ask, is it worth risking a physical altercation? Is it worth risking a false accusation of harassment?
That's a really good point. You're not just paying for delivery, you're paying for risk mitigation. You're outsourcing the conflict.
And in areas like New Orleans East, or any high-tension zone, that buffer is...
Fiat Process Servers, LLC. The name implies they are, 2 hours away in Lafayette, but they're operating out of Metairie.
Mon Galleria Boulevard. It's a central business hub.
And why do the credentials matter here? They list being DBB accredited A+ rating, the New Orleans Chamber, Jefferson Chamber, French Quarter Business Association. Is this just resume padding?
In this specific industry, no. The process serving industry is notoriously fragmented. There are a lot of what they call trunk slammers, people working out of their cars, no insurance, no office, here today, gone tomorrow.
Trunk slammers. I like that term.
It's a real problem. If your process server just disappears or goes out of business, and you need them to testify in court about a service they did 3 months ago, you're screwed.
You lose your only witness.
Right. So seeing a membership in the Chamber of Commerce or the BBB, it isn't just a badge. It signals permanence. It says, we have a physical office. We are part of the local ecosystem. We are not running away.
It's accountability.
Yeah.
And speaking of the BBB, there was a little marketing detail in the source that I thought was pretty clever. The bonus offer.
The free notarization.
Yeah. 1 free notarization if you write a BBB review and you send them a screenshot.
It's brilliant, honestly. Notarization is a pain. You have to find someone, pay the fee. It's usually cash. Bundling it as a reward for a review does 2 things. 1, it builds their social proof on a really high-trust platform like the BBB.
And 2,
it proves they're confident. You do not ask a client to review you on the Better Business Bureau if you think you did a bad job. It effectively weaponizes their own customer satisfaction to build more trust.
there's that word again, weaponizing. But in a good way this time.
In a strategic way.
So, okay, we've covered the map, the speed, the danger, and the tack. If we zoom out, what is the lesson here for someone who maybe isn't a landlord? Why should the average listener even care about the mechanics of serving papers?
I think it reveals the hidden machinery of the city. We walk past apartment buildings every single day. We see for rent signs, but we don't see the logistical war that happens when that contract breaks.
It's the infrastructure of accountability.
Precisely. Yeah. And the lesson is about the value of specialization. You can try to navigate the first city versus second city court jurisdiction yourself. You can try to drive to Algiers yourself. You can try to tackle a hostile tenant situation yourself. But the system is designed to reward those who know the shortcuts.
The information advantage.
Yes. Knowing that the sheriff is slow isn't enough. You have to know who is fast. Knowing you need proof isn't enough. You need to know that a GPS timestamp is the only proof that really counts.
It reminds me of that analogy of the toll road. The sheriff is the public highway. It's there, it's valid, but it is jammed with traffic. The private server is the express lane. You pay a toll, but you get to your destination while the other guy is still stuck in gridlock.
And in the rental market, sitting in gridlock costs you $50, $100, $200 a day in lost rent. The toll is cheap compared to the cost of that wait.
That is the takeaway right there. Efficiency isn't free, but inefficiency is incredibly expensive.
Wonderfully put.
Before we sign off, I want to leave the listeners with a final thought. We tend to think of legal tech as, AI, lawyers, or smart contracts on the blockchain. But sometimes disruption just looks like a guy named Scott in Metairie using a smartphone camera to timestamp a piece of paper so a judge doesn't throw a case out. It's unsexy innovation, but it's what keeps the market moving.
It solves the boring problems, and those are usually the most important ones.
Exactly. Something to think about the next time you see a process server double parked with their hazards on. They're the grease in the gears. That is it for this deep dive into the gritty world of New Orleans evictions. Big thanks to Lafayette Process Servers for the source material, and of course to 337 Media for keeping the lights on. We'll see you next time.
Stay safe out there.